Hey, Mr. McSweeney, for our macroeconomics topic, we will be talking about the Phillips curve today. Okay. Hit it, Rebecca.
The Phillips curve was created by A.W. Phillips, and it shows that the economy can only be in 3 stages: recessionary gap, inflationary gap, or full employment.
The Phillips curve shows the trade-off between the inflation and the rate of unemployment, which is an inverse relationship. So when the unemployment rate is low, inflation is high, and therefore when inflation is low, the unemployment rate is high.
But in the long run, there's no trade-off between inflation and unemployment.
Okay, and for on the graphs, when there is a shift in aggregate demand, that means that there's a movement along the SRPC. But when there is a shift in the aggregate supply, that will shift the SRPC. And then in the long run, when we have inflation, wages will eventually increase and resource prices will also go up. And then that will put us back at full employment. Now let's graph it out.
The LRPC is always vertical, and right here is the rate of unemployment at 5%.
Okay, so in this graph, the AD shifts to the right, which creates a movement along the SRPC. And since the AD shifts to the right in the first graph on the Phillips curve, the point is going to go from the natural rate of unemployment to the left, which will create an inflationary gap.
This is a recessionary gap, but in this example, the AS is shifting instead of the AD, so the SRPC shifts as well.
Okay, in this graph, the AS shifts to the left, so on the Phillips curve, the SRPC is going to do the opposite and shift to the right, which on this graph, it shows a recessionary gap. And since it is a shift in the aggregate supply, it shifts the SRPC. It doesn't move along the curve of the SRPC.
This is a recessionary gap, and it shows the AD shifting to the left, which causes the SRPC to shift to the right, causing low inflation and high unemployment.
Okay, to recap what we just went over, there's a trade-off between inflation and the rate of unemployment. It's an inverse relationship. So when the inflation rate is high, unemployment is low. And when the rate of unemployment is high, then the inflation is low. And when there is a shift in the AD, then there is a movement along the curve of the SRPC. And in the long run, when it self-corrects, it is because the prices of the resources and prices in general are increasing, which moves it back to full unemployment rate. One more thing, when the aggregate supply shifts, then that is going to shift the SRPC. It isn't a movement along the curve. The only time there's a movement is when it is a shift in the aggregate demand. All right, time to FRQ it up.
FRQ. This is the FRQ. Please pause the video. Sorry about that. Please pause the video and try this FRQ on your own, and we'll go over the answers.
All right, so this is our graph. This is the inflation and the rate of unemployment, and then the SRPC with the LRPC. So in a recessionary gap, the point is going to go to the right, and that is point A.
Let's go.
And this shows the low rate of inflation and the high rate of unemployment. All right, so this is part BI, and this is the aggregate demand and supply. We have AD, and then the aggregate supply, and then the LRAS is vertical, and this is the long run equilibrium output.
Yep.
Now we're going to add the current equilibrium, which will show a recession of what we just did on our Phillips curve. Okay, this is our current equilibrium, which shows the YE and the PLE. It has shown that our price level has gone up and our real GDP has gone down, which on the Phillips curve, that is when inflation goes up and the rate of unemployment goes down.
Okay. So, with the government raising income taxes, that causes the AD to shift to the left, which means that people are less willing to purchase things in the economy, and that causes price level to go down as well as real GDP.
All right, that's it for our Phillips curve lesson. Hope you enjoyed.
Now we'll move on to oligopolies and game theory.